Hello and welcome. I'm Mariana Trapnell, President and Chief Excel Geek here at Accelerations. Since you now know the secret to building nested formulas, we're going to take a slight detour and talk about the IFERROR function. Let's take a look, shall we? All right, we interrupt our regularly scheduled programming to bring you this important message. So what happens when a formula returns an error? Generally, you see an error message like NA, ref, div 0. Basically, it makes your report look messy, and then sometimes it even affects the totals. So what do I mean by that? Take a look. So here we've got a nice project activity summary, but it's kind of marred by the fact that we actually have all these errors sitting in here. We've got a calculation happening in this column where we're doing a VLOOKUP, and you can see it's returning an NA, which basically means it can't find the information that we've specified. So in U63 to V70, it can't find a phase 3. So it's returning an NA. But that means that when we add across to total invoiced, that returns an NA as well. When we add down to get to total invoiced and total costs, also an NA. And then over here, we've got a different kind of error happening. Oops, there's another NA there as well. Over here, we've got another kind of error happening. So we've got a formula that says take H68 divided by I68. And basically, we're trying to determine our average worker cost per hour, which works fine as long as we've got hours. But if there's a 0 in the hours, then we're dividing by 0 and we get the div 0 error, which is also going to add down to a div 0. Not very helpful, and it really makes the report look messy. So rather than having to go in and manually delete each of those formulas each month, because it could be a different one the next month, what we can actually do is put in an IFERROR formula. So as it says, do you really want to give that report to your boss? Probably not. So we're going to use IFERROR, and the structure for that is really straightforward. It's just IFERROR, and then you put whatever the other formula is, and then you tell it what to return instead. So as I've talked about before with nested formulas, you build them in parts. So in this case, you're going to write your main formula first, so the VLOOKUP or the H divided by I, and then stick an IFERROR around it. Okay, and the what to return instead piece, or the second piece here, can actually be a number or a string. So you can actually say return a 0, or return not found, or return NA without being an error. You could actually just write N/A in text. So we can actually do a few different things with this. So let's take a look at what that might look like. So here's my main formula, and the key thing to make sure is that your formula is actually returning what you expect it to return first. Because obviously if you build it wrong, you stick a comma in the wrong spot or whatever, it's going to return an error. So you don't want to put an IFERROR on that, because then you're going to get zeros all the way down, and that's not going to be very helpful either. So in this case, it is actually returning something, and I happen to know that there's no phase 3 in my list where I'm doing the VLOOKUP. So I'm actually going to say IFERROR, and then an open bracket, okay? That's the front end of it, and then the back end of it is just comma, and then what you want it to return instead. So in this case, because I'm trying to look up the invoiced costs for phase 3, if it doesn't find it, that's pretty much the same as saying 0, right? So I'm going to put a 0 in here, and close bracket, and enter. Okay, so now you can see all of those errors went away, and it's actually summing correctly. Now, I've only put it on this particular cell, so I better copy that up. So I'm just doing Control-C and Control-V to paste it in. Okay, so now I've got that IFERROR on all of my cells. Okay, so that's the first one taken care of. Now, this next one, we've got div 0 because we're trying to divide by 0, as I mentioned. Let's fix that one. IFERROR, And then in this case, what I want to do is I don't want to say 0 because it's not really a 0 cost. Well, in this case, it probably is. It's actually no cost for the worker. But if I actually had like $100 in the cost and no hours, that might be something I'd want to check into. So I might say, and in this case, I'm going to do a string. So I'm putting double quote, not, let's say, error. So we're actually returning an error, but it's actually just text as far as Excel is concerned. So I'm going to put that in, and it says error. Or maybe say instead, no hours. There we go. That looks better. So now I'm going to copy that down and copy it up. Paste value, paste formula using Control V. And there we go. Now I'm seeing that, and this is actually summing. It should probably be an average cost. Control Shift up to select all that. So I'm getting an average of $51.90 per worker. Okay. So the other thing I could do, just to point it out, is if I didn't want to say anything, I just wanted to have it perfectly blank, I can actually just put double quote, with nothing between, no space, nothing, just double quote, enter, and that actually will return a blank instead. So I could do that either way, but in either case, you can see that the total is actually returning properly. All right, so that's how you would put an if error around your other formula that you actually care about. And then, as you can see, this is a much better report to provide to your boss, a lot cleaner, and it actually has the totals where it's supposed to. And next month, if it happens to be phase 2 that's missing, that's just fine. It'll calculate as a 0 for that one instead. All right, so again, 2 tips. Write your other formula first and make sure it works, and then copy the combined or nested formula to all the other cells that it applies to. Okay, please leave me a comment or drop me an email at mariana@accelerations.com. Let me know if you've had a chance to use this. It's really quick to use, and you can try it even on formulas that actually work, and just make sure that you know how the structure works, and it's going to work for you in the future when you really do need it. All right, that is it for this week, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for stopping by.